Hey everybody, welcome to episode 34 of Tactical Crouch, competitive Overwatch podcast with your favorite people in Overwatch, currently doing a podcast about Overwatch or whatever.
Called Tactical Crouch.
That's us.
We'll get it there. We'll get that there. All right?
Maybe one day.
Someday we'll make that a thing. Of course, I'm KickedTripod. We've got the entire crew. Man, we're at like 70% our normal selves today, I feel like.
It's going to be a weird one.
It's going to be a weird one. We've got Mr. Hay Fever over there. Volamel just looked like he got, I don't know, punched in the face.
I feel like puffy all through my sinuses.
You're like kind of red and just, yep. You have nice eyebrows though, so.
Thank you. If you didn't show up for the pre-show, you missed out. We did some story time. I don't know if that's an incentive, but you guys need to show up and ask some questions. Where's the checkered shirt? We retired it for today. Okay, so no plaid. You're gonna have to deal with stripes.
God bless America.
Exactly.
We own stripes, Yiska. I don't know if you knew that. Wearing plaid this week. And can't tell an itch from pain right now is Yiska. Good to see you, man. I guess. Thanks for sticking this one out with us.
Yeah, it's fine so far. Like it usually gets worse in the evening, right? When you have a cold, and then towards like going to sleep, it's bad. But yeah, there's some hours to go.
All right. Well, hopefully you can stick it through another hour. But yeah, got a lot of Overwatch stuff going on, actually.
Yeah,
especially for not having
up.
Overwatch League. You know, it's we've got Pacific Showdown coming this week. We've got some trades to talk about. We've got
some closures.
Yeah,
if you want to call them that.
Disbands, whatever.
Can I just say how nice it is to have this mid-season break? I honestly, I'm so great. Like, I think it's great to have that. There's a lot of opportunity for patches. Like, there's definitely viewer fatigue for me.
Sure.
And certainly also for people, you see it go down heavily in terms of viewership on the subreddits and whatever. Everyone's enjoying their break from it. And then you can start up with new excitement. Teams get to sort of like incorporate these new players into their team, and it's less harsh on them to get them in. I think mid-season break, it could even be extended by like a week or something. I mean, there would be an opportunity for patches. We're not using that one apparently, but yeah, it just like structurally, I think it's great.
I like it in theory. I still would have liked like watch point to kind of be sporadically through the week to kind of fill in that gap, so you can be kept up to date. You can have, the experts come in, talk to the viewers about what's going on, what might be coming in the future, their thoughts going into stage 3, giving them content so that at least they're continuously interested. You don't have to tune in. You can watch at your leisure. It's not like a live show that you need to tune into. Creating content around the league, from the league, or from some sort of like official third party, I think is important. I think it's a missed opportunity that they haven't done so yet. It kind of comes back to my same gripe with like last year's like playoff finals. Like there was no like hype videos around it. There was nothing put out with the league. It was just like show up. There's a missing element of like excitement, or like a small breadcrumb trail that they're like kind of leading you into stage 3, and it's just absent. And I think absence does make the heart grow fonder, but you gotta ease them into it again.
That not just ease in, but also just like summarize what happened in the first 2 stages.
Sure, yeah.
That is a lot of information to take in. Just go through the stuff that we had, paint an accurate picture. For instance, like thinking of MVPs. Okay, the Overwatch League is doing that with articles. Reinforce had one.
Sure.
Like other stuff is coming. It is in that regard, it's pretty cool. I wish just we had like broadcast, just like summarizing performances of the season. Who's in the running for MVP there? What cool plays happened? What memorable moments? Stuff like this.
Well, the mid-season, or not the mid-season, well, technically it is like the mid-season break, which is a little bit longer, but even the interstage breaks, like I would not mind at all if they extended it a week and like, but like had them say like, you know what, we recommend having your team stay on, and we're going to do content week.
Sure.
Where you record a bunch of content to put out for the next stage that, it's not like super timely, right? Whether it's just, creating some storylines about your players or whatever, because there is that, like, in esports, there is that just kind of like content drought that happens. And Overwatch League now did it in the first season. Now they've done it in the second season, where like the first week of broadcasts were amazing. So much great content. So much like awesome featurettes or whatever. And then week 2 hits and I'm back to watching 3-minute timers between every map or whatever. I'm like, there's no reason for a timer to be there. There's no
literally
reason.
Put up clips.
Play the other thing.
They did then.
Yes, they've improved. I will say, like, I can gripe about them and we can gripe about them, but they have slowly improved. Like, even with their featurettes and their videos, like the Shock Vancouver piece that was overused a little bit, but great piece for the stage 1 finals.
Better than a timer, by the way.
Yes, 100%. So much better. But like the quality, they're starting to kind of find their footing on what kind of content they want to make. They're bringing in people that have better ideas of what they should be doing. And as much as I criticize the league, I do have to commend them and say, like, yeah, I like this stuff. Continue doing it, please. It's great. I think everybody likes it. I just want a little bit more of it. That's all.
I do. Yeah, we kind of jumped into the news. Well, we didn't really jump into the news. But before we do, quick housekeeping stuff. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at @tactical_crouch. Tweet us your questions and topics you'd like to have us discuss on the show, or bring them up when we record live on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Bring up your questions. If we like them, we'll post them in the notes and answer them where appropriate, usually at the end of the show. So definitely do that. And of course, you can watch or listen to Tactical Crouch wherever you can listen to podcasts or watch YouTube videos. So yeah, that's it.
The only reason why we weren't live yesterday is because somebody was getting their fantastic internet put in. So we will be back on schedule from now on. And we might have an extra podcast this week. We'll have to see.
We'll see, yeah.
Hopefully that works out, because that'd be really cool. We so I did get an internet upgrade. I was running only a gigabyte down and 40 up yesterday, and I'm now running at a gigabyte down, or whatever. I can't remember.
I think I don't know.
I think bit is transfer speeds, byte is it's like size. And like 8 bits in a byte, but you don't use them in that way. Something like that. Anyways, we now have 1 gig down and 1 gig up. So I can not worry about
sweet.
That upload issue that we were having. So apparently Comcast gives you this gigabit down, 40,
potential sponsor,
40 megs
Comcast.
up. They do a lot of great things, but charging me for internet is not one of them. Apparently I share my upload speed of 40 megs with other people in the building, which, if you notice, during prime time when we're streaming the podcast, we would drop frames multiple week. Found out that was the issue, is because we were sharing the upload with other people. And I'm like, I used to have 10 up and not drop any frames. Now I have 40 and I'm dropping frames. That's ridiculous. And they're like, yep. I'm like, can I pay more to not have that? And they're like $200 more.
Ooh.
And I was like,
so what are you with? Are you like, what ISP are you with now?
I literally picked up the phone. I was just like, hello, AT&T. AT&T, are you there? Please come on in, come on. And they're like, yeah, we can be there in 2 weeks. So then I had to use that internet for 2 more weeks.
Dang.
I still actually have it hooked up. You can see the modem right there, the Comcast modem. So technically I do have like 2 ISPs right now. But yeah, it's been running great since. So, whew.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it was business class. Anyways, that was a good story. Sorry, I had to take care of something in chat. Let's talk about some news. First one, Paris Eternal Academy have disbanded after being demoted to Open Division. I feel like we talked about this in hypotheticals, right? In like when academy teams first announce is like,
yes, what happens if one actually falls out?
And apparently that's a thing now.
If I'm going to be completely honest, might not be the only academy team that falls out. China's got one that's in trials. They haven't started trials yet, but I would not be shocked if they fell out. Guangzhou Academy did not do well this contender season. So
is Eternal Academy the team that Swoosh was coaching?
I believe so, yes. He went from doing Gigante to Paris.
Retired from that, yeah. The thing is, and to me that has always been a whack aspect of Contenders, but there's a really real possibility that they might buy, or they could potentially buy. I'm not saying they will, but they could potentially buy back into the league.
Buy a slot,
I always thought that was whack in a way, but yeah, it's not impossible.
Yeah. So
not the first time.
I don't know. This is, EU is not really my strong suit. Anything that you could tell us about Eternal Academy for people who maybe haven't watched a ton of EU Contenders trials or anything like that?
To be honest, not reliably. It's just like they had a couple of good pieces, I suppose. In the end, honestly, that was at times a clown fiesta from the games I've seen. But I also don't have seen nearly enough to have an accurate analysis in my head for them. So whatever. Like,
yeah,
it was just kind of surprising, and I obviously we talked to people a little bit closer to the teams than what we're comfortable with, and yeah, going into trials like teams like Clockwork Vendetta, Young and Beautiful, these are teams that you wouldn't expect an academy team to kind of lose to. Even I think they lost to you've got teams like Wind and Rain and Crescent Dew. Let me pull up their record, but like they're just dropping games to like teams they really shouldn't. They beat Q-Lash, lose to Clockwork Vendetta, lose to Young and Beautiful. Like it's for the the what do you want to call it? Like the name potential, like the power of the names that they have on that roster, and then the back end. Granted, academy teams are a little bit overblown in that aspect, but still, like you have a little bit of funding, you have a little bit more resources than some unsigned team. To lose to trials teams is not good at all.
Yeah.
Well,
we also had another academy team disband, and this one was not because that they were doing poorly. So, which is the understatement. The Florida Mayhem organization, of course, had Mayhem Academy. The team that had better branding and better records than their Overwatch League team.
Yeah.
That team there. So they have disbanded after kind of taking a hiatus from Contenders. You've got Mangachu on there, Manitin, Paintbrush, Curry Shot, who was on the show, coach there. Reprise was actually on Overwatch League Daily back in the day. So lots of great talent there going to free agent. So like my understanding of this is just primarily budgetary. Is that?
Yeah,
I would imagine so. The only thing that makes me question that is that they've been pretty public in saying like, "Oh, we'll be back. Like we'll come back and we'll have a roster that better fits our main team," which obviously means that they're probably going to try to import some Korean players that they want to draft upwards into the team. But I don't know. That's the only thing that makes me question if it's strictly just a budget thing, or if it's just we don't need it right now, so we don't have to have
That's
it.
That's a really good point. Yeah, because if the Mayhem's commitment is going to an all Korean roster, you look now and it's Canadian, Finnish, right? yellow
I'm
and
not sure.
yellow and blue flag. Yiska, that's
Is that
Finland?
Sweden?
Yeah, Sweden.
Sweden. My bad. That's my face. A couple Americans on there. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, go on.
So it's like, yeah, I had nothing else to add.
Okay. So, I mean, in itself, in a way, that team paid for itself because you got Fade, I suppose, of the trade.
Mm-hmm.
You also got to get rid of some salaries. And then rather than rebuild, it's still very, very sad. I also wonder what they're going to do with their coaching staff, because I think that was some of the best parts of their team. Now, if they've gone full Korean, they probably don't need these guys. So I wonder, and I don't know, I have no idea, but there are coaching staff members on other tier 2 teams that have buyouts. I wonder if that is true for Reprise and Curry Shot, because I could see that others are going to take, even our teams, going to take interest in them. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm wondering, like, they are sort of selling their talent machine. I already, honestly, like this, I still believe hybrid rosters, as we elaborated on last episode, are the way to go. I think they're taking a step back from what is feasible. I also think the coaching staff that they had in their academy team would have been conclusive to making such a thing happen. Then you just need like a good Korean head coach, and depending on how that is, like that search is going. But you need that one anyway now, I guess. So yeah, it's very interesting to me. And if Curry Shot and Reprise don't have buyouts, my God, they're just like giving free potential money away. Like the opportunity cost of that is just, for me, knowing the work of these guys is pretty insane. I think they're making a mistake in that regard. And yeah, but we will see. I think technically the value of that tier 2 team has already been demonstrated. I don't see why they wouldn't have been able to repeat that. That is, if they didn't know that Curry Shot and Reprise were going to be picked up for Overwatch League eventually. That is also a possibility, and they knew they would have to also hunt for quality stuff again. In that case, fair enough. I don't know what's happening or what's in the works, but if you're actually sitting just like on the salaries of these players, depending on the contract, once again, yeah, I don't see it being even a financial benefit, to be honest, in the long term.
I think it's important to also hold them accountable, because if you are going to make that calculated risk and say, okay, we know that you have a track record of success, we would like to bring you up, but the way that our main roster is positioned, we can't really afford to do that. Not necessarily financially, but just the way that the land is at the moment, the way that the ecosystem is on the team. So with that decision to go full Korean, while knowing that you have an academy roster that is built fairly well, doing incredibly well with solid coaches that are spoken highly of and have lots of credits behind them, and you choose not to kind of reinvest in them, double down, bring them onto your main roster and let them kind of help build out your team, maybe build around some of the players you bring up that are of age, I think you have to kind of hold them accountable there. So if this team doesn't really work out and you just let free agents go and you use these trades and you let the coaches go off to wherever they land and they do well and your team flops, I don't know, I'm gonna have to point a finger and say maybe that was a missed opportunity and maybe this wasn't the right idea. Because again, I wasn't a big fan of them trying to dip into the Korean pool. You're gonna have to outbid a lot of different teams. I don't know. I still think that was probably the wrong choice.
Yeah.
How many players from Mayhem Academy have been moved to Overwatch League?
Was it 3?
Fact and Shax. I know Fact Fiction and Shax were specifically
Hago got moved. Cloudy.
Yeah, for the week he was on that
team. Right.
Apply, I guess. I mean, they have a decent track record of moving people out.
So, yeah, I mean, like, but a big part of, I could totally be misunderstanding here, and I can like already see Dream probably yelling in Twitch chat if I say this wrong here. But my understanding is a big part of what makes the financial, like the financial part of owning a Contenders team makes sense is basically the buyouts.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Buyouts, opportunity of raising your own talent. You definitely can't underestimate the marketing value that you could potentially have in the future. Also, like scrims, especially if you have a terrible team, you're not getting many Overwatch League scrims potentially. We know that from last season, right? So.
Right. So I wonder if it just was, like I don't have a spreadsheet of like all the other Contenders teams that have, that are doing well are moving more players forward, and maybe they're like, well, if we're not moving forward, it really doesn't matter if we're winning if these players aren't moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Are we really making money here? Like, at some point, like that probably has to matter, but that's all just kind of guessing.
I mean, again, it's very significant when you look at this is another team that I have to pay salaries for. I'm in a emergency management phase with my main roster where I'm having to shell out for new players left and right. I need to make this season mean something if I want to kind of keep my job. So mid-season, I gotta have to make some big moves, gonna have to trade people away, get people in. There's still coaching staff to kind of fill out. I got to imagine Florida spending a pretty penny on this season that they didn't really expect to have to spend, which is surprising because that roster wasn't great. But
I know, right? Like, I don't know what you expected.
Yeah, like I would imagine that they're probably shelling out here. Again, they let players go and let their contracts just kind of not lapse, but they're kind of letting them ride out their contracts on an inactive roster. So there's just money being hemorrhaged there. Like, I don't know. Florida's juggling a lot. They're spinning a lot of dishes here. We'll have to see. I don't know. But yeah, financially, I got to imagine that they're kind of hurting.
Yeah. Speaking of academy teams, though, that are promoting their own players, the Toronto Defiant have 2 new players coming up from their main roster, or to their main roster from the Montreal Rebellion, which is their academy team. So both Gods and, man, I'm going to suck at say, is it Sherrick? Both Gods and Sherrick moving up. Coming on up, joining the big boys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a move. That's crazy, to be honest with you. This is going to be Defiant 2.0 coming into stage 3. I don't know what to expect from this team. We'll have to get into that later on, but
yeah.
Well, Toronto Defiant have kind of had an interesting kind of go of things with in stage 1, right? So we look at stage 1 standings and, they're in playoffs, 5-2, looking great. Stage 2, they're 2-5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Big fall off.
So,
asymmetric schedule once again. Like 5-2 means nothing if it's against bad teams. It's just how it is.
Just like 28-0.
I mean, if you could dodge all the
I don't know. I think they looked pretty bad. Like asymmetrical schedule, I'll concede that, but there was a big drop in performance. Like, I think that was just obvious.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. But yeah, I don't know. I like the move from a theoretical point of view. Once again, refer to the last episode, mixed roster's way to go.
And we're going to PvP this later on. So
okay.
Yeah. If you want to save your points, because this is already interesting.
Yeah.
Sure.
But just wanted to bring it up. There are 2 new things. Hopefully our episode this weekend, if we get to happen, hopefully can shed some more light on that as well.
A little bit of light on that. Again, I want to, bring up the point. if you guys want to speculate on roster moves, you have to look at the coaches first. Look at the coaches, who they've coached before, what roles they need, and start pulling from there first. Where does it make sense? Is there any unsigned talent? Do they, are they on their academy roster, and can they be moved up? Gods has worked with Bishop before. I thought I saw somebody ask in chat who actually speaks English on this roster. Obviously, Broy, their analyst, speaks quite a bit of English. I think I would say quite fluent. I believe I know for a fact that Roki has semi-conversational, he can go back and forth with you, words here and there, but I don't know how good he is at calling. From my understanding, they're working through it. We'll have to see. Obviously, it's going to be interesting.
You got to that. Of course,
Right.
in terms of Contenders news, there was also, we kind of forgot to mention it in the notes, but NRG also got rid of their Contenders roster. It's just if it happens to one team.
Ago?
No, I think it was shortly after Mayhem closed.
Oh.
Mayhem Academy.
So if it happens to one team, that's maybe an organizational thing. If it happens to two teams, okay. If it happens to more teams that are just completely abandoning Contenders, then we got to talk about structural incentives and how that either the equation from the teams and what they use the academy team for is not advanced enough, or the equation just doesn't make sense for certain teams. Because, for instance, for Spitfire, it makes a lot of sense to engage the local fan base and do that. Also, Spitfire had success with selling Overwatch League players into the Overwatch League, making a name for themselves there. They had international success. So maybe it only makes sense. Maybe the breaking point for Mayhem was, do they get to the Atlantic Showdown? Okay, now it's worth it. Whatever it is, if it happens to more organizations, especially this year, then we got to talk about structural problems in the contender scene.
Yeah, there's got to be kind of something going on there. I think there's also something where the Shock kind of have a unique thing where, they've kind of learned that maybe they can just buy the roster that they want.
They just buy talented players that aren't of age and just slap them on an inactive contract.
Else, you've got the ideal is that you sell off your talent that you don't need for your own organization.
Sure.
And you make money off of them. We call that the Minnesota Twins approach. And the opposite approach is the New York Yankees. We're just we're going to buy that guy. We're going to buy that guy. We're going to buy that guy. And we're going to buy that guy. I don't know what their scouting system is like anymore, but they had a good one for a while, and then they had a really bad one. So, maybe there's something to it there where Shock's just we don't really need the cost, and we're not really worried about, maybe we think that the way to go is just to buy the players rather than to do some
just create some legacy.
It's not like people are Shock having issues finding scrims, and are NRG realistically good scrim partners for the Shock. I don't know how else,
yeah, I imagine so.
I will say, just as a tool in which they used it, especially to bridge over Rascal's contract until the next season, because I think they signed him after the signing window and then to the Contenders team. So that gives them the ability to match whatever offer is coming in. And in that regard, also how Rascal is playing, that paid off, right? Mm-hmm. That was a move that, even though it looked unlikely in the past, if you know the player itself, know the motivations, know the structure, know which head coach you have, what the synergy is there, how he performs under pressure, that might not be as ridiculous of a scenario to calculate. And now that also paid off in a big way. So in that regard, just holding that, they sold Swan, they had Damon on that team. I think, honestly, the team NRG Esports, so the Contenders team, Academy team for Shock, actually already fulfilled their purpose in that regard.
Yeah,
that's a good point too.
It's such a good tool in so many different ways. I think the big problem is it's just not financially. I don't think you can draw even consistently, if that makes sense. I don't think you're even like floating into yellow like long enough to make it worthwhile, especially with teams figuring out what they're doing for 2020, this, that, the other thing. It's just another kind of plate they have to spin, another thing on their minds that they have to worry about. You have to manage the team house, hire managers there, this, that, the other thing. I can't imagine it's all that exciting, all that fun for the pocketbook either. I guess the big thing that I'd like to see change is maybe lifting the sponsorship regulations to make teams look at the prize money, look at the sponsorship a little bit more favorably. So they want to keep their teams around to support this fledgling scene that is going to need support at some point. You know, you're going to need the next generation to come up, and you're going to need that scouting ground. So, you know, we can't just abandon this.
Well, this is also probably a pretty good segue into what we have going on this weekend, which is the Pacific Showdown, which is going to let us see some, you know, kind of contenders levels teams go together in tournament format outside of traditional contenders. And, you know, you had just kind of talked about other ways to monetize your contenders teams. Obviously, one way you could do that is outside of contenders winnings and with tournaments and such. We don't see a whole lot of those, but we do have the Pacific Showdown coming down this week. Joe, I expect this to be the most in your wheelhouse.
Sure.
So give us the skinny on what's going on, who's playing, what. Yeah.
Long and short of it, we've got two teams from China. We have the first seed from China being Lingan Esports Huya, who are the Chengdu Hunters Academy team. And strangely enough, kind of squeaking out, the second seed is T1W, who many people, or few people, might know as a big Chinese staple. This season, as of late, they have not looked. It's a completely different team in terms of performance. Same players, just performing very, very badly. So those are your two Chinese representatives. And then from Korea, we have Element Mystic, who ended up winning in pretty convincing fashion over O2. And O2 is obviously the second seed. Pretty exciting teams. I think they're going to do very well. And then from the Pacific region, we have Talon Esports. Kind of they're interesting. They have a style. They try to force it as much as possible. They like to play Mei. They like to play Genji. They run some oddball stuff, but for the most part still are leaning on the somber goats, your standard 3-3 comps. And then Order, who still has like a little bit of spice. They're like vanilla bean ice cream instead of just your typical vanilla goats comp team. They like to throw in, you know, a little bit of ash here and there. So I think, you know, there's a very clear bottom pack and there's a very, very clear top pack, and it'll be interesting. Again, if you're tired of seeing goats specifically and you want to see some different looks, you want to see some Doomfist, you want to see some Sombra, maybe some triple DPS comps, I'd tune in. Maybe even catch the VOD, because I know it's kind of early. It's I'd say it's EU kind of friendly, but for all us NA folks, it's a little rough.
It's VOD Town. Let's complain about how we in the US shouldn't have to watch games at 1 a.m. What a travesty. Unbelievable.
I don't know. It's rough. It's rough for sure.
You know.
Very rough.
It's great.
It's not fun.
Nice.
You don't want to agitate the pay picks of the Overwatch League.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you're talking about pay pigs. This kind of goes back to what we were talking about. Like, why, like, no sponsor for the showdowns? Nothing. No, like, title sponsor.
I feel like it is pretty quiet around both of these competitions, and also the Atlantic Showdown anyway. Like, who's casting? What's happening? Like, you know, in that regard,
I don't know if there's an English broadcast for this. To be completely honest with you, I don't know.
Avril and Pixie are doing it.
Are they? Okay, because I know that they had announced like the Eastern casters, but I didn't see any English names on there.
I just did a show. I produced Streamer Showdown, and Avril and Pixie. And Avril was on it. It was a Game of Thrones edition. He's a big Game of Thrones fan. Actually knows a lot about Game of Thrones. And we were talking afterward, and I had already kind of heard through another source of the English broadcasters, and so he goes, "Yeah, just be watching my Twitter feed. You should see something cool coming up." I'm like, "I think I already know, man." He's like, "Oh, how do you know?" I know
Good,
people.
good. Well, good for them. Hopefully, we'll be tuning in tonight. At least I will. Won't speak for everybody because again, it's at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see.
What about, I gotta ask, because apparently Avril and Pixie announced that themselves on Twitter and it wasn't incorporated in the Blizzard press announcement. Has anyone announced casting the Atlantic Showdown?
Not that I know of.
Chat? I don't think so. And that is also weird. I'm sure someone will be at the venue, right? But
oh yeah.
I mean, is it the usual European crew? Are they all flown out? Like, it's super weird. Yeah, it's, I don't know.
Is it weird? I feel like this is pretty par for the course. Like they wait till the absolute last minute to say anything about anything.
I think we're kind of used to Contenders and Overwatch League announcement stuff where it's, weeks and months in advance. Whereas in like the old tournament days, like you knew that ZP and somebody else was going to do Alienware Monthly Melee, but maybe you didn't know until just a few days before until who that was.
It's also, the thing is, it's so different. Like the takeover to 1 and 2 tournaments, right? With very different atmosphere than you're used from other tournaments. Are we getting the lax structure where we can sit players down on the couch, or is there going to be a separate caster room? Which is, by the way, very possible. They have done it for other language streams during takeover, that they had like a separate room where the German cast was happening or whatever. But like, what's the experience going to be like? Is this going to be highly professional, like ties and suits, or is this going to be, oh yeah, Numlock, you want to cast? Okay, come in. Stuff like this, right? And that makes it for a very different experience.
Yeah, I mean, it totally did. And you're going to be at the Atlantic Showdown, correct?
Yes, I will be.
Get us some tactical crouch footage, will you? Just get us. Yeah, so
you're gonna work that too.
It's just kind of interesting, right? Because these are kind of advertised as kind of big thing. $125,000 prize pools. At least that's what I have up for Pacific. I'm assuming Atlantic is the same, if not more.
Pretty sure.
We'll just say it's the same. So, I mean, that's nothing to squeeze at. I mean, what's the prize pool for a whole season of Contenders? I think it's close to that, isn't it?
Yeah, the Atlantic Showdown has also 125,000.
NA, what is this? NA East was 200K prize pool split across 8 teams.
Split across, since based off of like wins and stuff too, right? So basically, it's a big chunk of change for a weekend of games.
Definitely.
So,
and there's added benefit of putting your players out there, highlighting them, and potentially shipping them off.
Regional invitation slots for the gauntlet, and I assume the gauntlet will be actually a pretty big thing this time around, just like
I'm hoping
next year. So
I'm hoping so, man. Again, like the end of the year for Overwatch is going to be pretty hype. We have Overwatch League playoffs, and then we've got Gauntlet, which is going to be a culmination of some pretty cool stories, and get to see the first one hoisted up. So yeah, I'm excited.
I would love to see during the breaks between stages just to have a one-off tournament like this. I don't care what region.
Yeah.
I don't care whatever. It's just, there's something fun about like a tournament bracket. More is on the line. Everything kind of matters. Double elimination for this one. So it's not, you're not immediately out, but I don't know. I just kind of miss the old tournament format,
Mm-hmm. It's always nice to have, a little bit of a change of pace. I think it'd be kind of interesting to see like maybe one of the Overwatch teams flown out to the showdowns, and maybe you have like a semi-serious like show match with the winner at, kind of like testing look, let's see how the best team from the Pacific Showdown fares against the Shanghai Dragons, for instance. We're playing in Shanghai. The team comes and reps their city. Crowd goes nuts, and they play a semi-serious. They're going to try a little bit.
You virtually cannot do that from an Overwatch League perspective, because the disillusionment of the differences between level of play in Contenders and Overwatch League would be insane to the average viewer. Sure. I'm very confident that the bottom third of the Overwatch League, so the bottom 6 teams, could feasibly be replaced with the best Contenders teams in the world, and it would improve the Overwatch League. Of course, there's some overlap where that couldn't happen because of age restrictions, but in general, it's like you gotta keep these two separated if you want to have the illusion that the highest level of play is going to happen in Overwatch League. And by the way, I'm not convinced that this is going to continue next year. I think if we're on the road, and depending on what kind of a schedule we have and how we travel, how much practice time there is for each player, if they're actually traveling every second week, how are scrims going to go? What about the European teams? Do they get quality scrim? Dude, I can easily see that Contenders is the higher level competition in the world, especially then for the Korean teams that can just be in their little incubator and just battle it out for the longest time. Seoul should have a huge benefit just based on that they get half of the season to practice in Korea. You by the way, you also want the Contenders team to be super strong, so you have very good scrim partners everywhere you go and are available also through your Contenders team. So next year, even if it's not encouraged or mandated, it would honestly, for many teams, especially non-American teams, be very stupid to not do that. And in general, I'm a little scared, depending on what kind of travel schedule we get, is that I'm just going to lose interest in Overwatch League, because I can see with my eyes that Element Mystic is once again producing one of the teams. Isn't it already scary that Runaway is the best team in the world?
I mean, from
you just shuttled in, and it's like, isn't it sort of already setting a precedent for that to work quite well?
There's a part of me, there's a very cynical part of me that wants that to happen, so that there is this big churn and there is a more of a focus on scouting and trying to bring up the best players possible to kind of maintain that level, even though there are going to be a lot of hurdles thrown the Overwatch League's way with travel, like you mentioned. But yeah, is it good for business? No, but there's something primal in me that just wants to see some of these teams that have half-assed this stuff, just to get shut up by some random no-name Contenders team from Pacific just comes in and just mollywops the Houston Outlaws. I think would be fantastic, or the Florida Mayhem.
Dude, it happens all the time. They warm up before their games and they get held at spawn doors by Contenders teams. These Overwatch League teams, some of them. It's honestly okay, how serious are you going to take it? Maybe before that, but dude, in regular scrims, it's not much different. And yes, the goal of playing scrims is not necessary to win, and maybe they are trying to adapt. Nah, man, I watch these games, and it's just they be in trials. Some of them.
Mm-hmm. Some of the more competitive regions,
So how do you make that? How do you make it so that the best teams and players are in Overwatch League without totally, just being all right, Robert Kraft, here's your $20 million back. We're gonna fill it up with somebody else.
I mean, it's not about that. It is literally about GMs being absolutely on top of their game. You need to have. Again, I had this article idea already in mind, and I would have called it, or I got it typed up, but never released it. Gatekeepers to greatness. A GM or whatever that person is that inhabits that position on an Overwatch League team that makes these decisions about talent, about players, about staff. That guy has so much responsibility, and has so much responsibility also to pick up the best players that invest their youth and all their drive to make the best teams. It's not just about a responsibility towards like their organization, even though now people will, oh, that's business. No, I don't care. There's a moral guideline to consider here, that these guys should be trying to get every single player that tries their hardest. Like it should never be the case that the best player in the world is outside the Overwatch League unless there's an age restriction thing. And dude, whenever it is so painful to me whenever someone comes up and it's just like, we're discussing talent and someone says, oh, is this guy Overwatch League level?
Yeah,
what does that even mean? What does that mean? Are you saying, okay, if we filled up like just like, okay, so we have like a pool and the players that are the best are increasingly light, so they bubble to the surface, and you just cut off at some point and the heavier ones just sink down. So the top, like all the best players are in, none of the worst players are comparatively in. Is that Overwatch League level, or is it Overwatch League level what's actually in Overwatch League, where there's someone in that honestly are OD tier? No kidding. There are players in Overwatch League absolutely under contract that would probably have problems getting on Contenders teams in some of the regions.
Now, I wanted to kind of talk about the GM point, because I agree that GM should be the people going out there, creating the system, putting people in charge of helping them build a roster that's going to be successful. But we know that some GMs in the league have completely delegated away that responsibility, and now that role lies on somebody else. So you could interchange the GMs and it's not going to change either the culture of the team, and it's not going to change the roster of the team, because that role happens to be in another area, that responsibility is put on somebody else. So I agree, like you've got to churn out the GMs if they're not, if your franchise, if your investment talking to you, whoever out there is spending all that money, if your GM's not doing the right job and they don't have that responsibility of fixing this roster, then you need to find out who is, and loose.
Here's another thing, dude. You know how I always talk about how real game performance is the most important thing in order to recruit players, and when you bring them in trials and they just blow you away, but were otherwise terrible in normal season games, then you shouldn't consider these trials nearly as strongly unless you have a very good reason to, and be highly aware of your own biases of like, oh, I can fix this player or whatever. That is not happening. Now, on the same way, if you are currently interviewing a GM from a successful Contenders team, and in your interview structure, it's not the person you imagine it to be, or have some sort of problem with their personality, or think they don't come off as like this transcendent. You look at their record. That is the only thing that should concern you. Are they building a brand with their team? Do they have a clear cut outline? Are they a name in the scene? Do they win championships? And if that is yes, it doesn't matter what this interview told you. It virtually shouldn't matter to you. You are not better at selecting someone than the system itself is. You look at the results and say, okay, you implement this person because based on the results. I personally don't have the expertise to judge someone on all the types of abilities that you need in esports, but their record speaks for themselves. It doesn't matter if they have a college degree or whatever. You hire them, it's certainly better than what most of these people had or teams had before.
I think there's somebody that really like sticks out to me when you say that is Huck, right? Huck is really polarized as a community figure in esports, going from a player to like say, dude is if he's saying something, he's speaking his mind. And so, I can't imagine that interview, like his track record had to have said a lot, because I know a lot of, coming from like a corporate company world, it's the same thing, right? Like, doesn't matter how good you are at what we're hiring you to do. Like, are you a good culture fit?
Yeah.
There is
these people are bullshit vendors. They are bullshit vendors. That's what they are.
Hold on. That's not totally true. as the GM being responsible for everything in culture in an Overwatch League franchise is probably a little bit more different and in-depth than culture in a Contenders. You can't just directly translate Contenders to Overwatch League is basically all I'm trying to say there. But I also agree in the sense of like, well, this person didn't do very well, but they have a can-do attitude. Like, that's also just like, no, dude.
Yeah. Or they were recommended to me by somebody.
Give somebody who's proven that they can be successful in the systems that you, the game developer, advertises being the developmental league for your league. And give those players the opportunity, or those coaches, or those GMs, or whatever, the opportunity to do that. It's not only number one, you reinforce the integrity of your system, and you bypass the people who want to go outside that system for whatever their jobs are. So you keep people in your system, which only brings more talent to your tier 2 scene, which actually might be bad for Overwatch League right now. But yeah, I just like it should not be this case to where we aren't seeing the best of the best, and we see it at every level in an Overwatch League franchise. We do, from GMs to social media to marketing to players and coaches.
Nope. It's a pain. And I think even the way that teams are recruiting players, I don't think the speed at which you recruit your team matters. I still think there's questions there, and again, it has to go back to the brass. It goes back to the head office, and what are we doing?
Also,
it's not succeeding. Well,
I have to
give, and it's usually not the players. You can rotate all these players all you want, but you're still going to just bring in mediocre talent. You're going to get mediocre results because the people up top are hiring those people.
I also got to call out DC here. It's like, okay, so in my mind, this guy was promoted to assistant GM, right? And my mind was like, okay, they finished their selection process, found someone, because Kate was also assistant GM. They're probably not getting a GM. Their selection process is gone. He has been behind the scenes, the guy facilitating the sleepy trade, facilitating like certain coach pickups or whatever. Someone is pulling these strings. Now, today you put out a tweet saying that you need a general manager while you're making all those decisions without having someone.
It's almost like that responsibility for the roster is put on somebody else.
And once again, this person that you're hiring is going to have to pull up with the bullshit you're making, and then you're going to throw it on that person for... This is a clown fiesta.
So
what is going on there?
You're saying it's a clown fiesta because it appears that they're just looking for a new GM now?
I mean, that in itself is...
Yes, that's part of it, but it's also like...
I've never heard this.
What does this person do if they're not in charge of managing the team and helping to facilitate trades around the team and building the team, or delegating to other people that help build the team? It's like almost like there's somebody else in charge of that, but they're some sort of like scapegoat. I don't know.
Maybe it's German business culture, and you got to tell me, Tripod, if I'm off base here. But is it not very, very normal that if management changes, so you have a date set for the manager, that the new manager comes in and there's like a period where they exchange like information, and it's just like, okay, you got to do this here, and like just like helps work them into the job, and that is just normal business practice? Or is that just a German thing? Because I feel like I've never been with a company where that wasn't the case.
So like, I think ideally, yes. Like, there's this transition period. I mean, you just saw this with Blizzard, right? Mike Morheim stayed on in an advisory role, which was basically handing the baton over to J. Allen Brack. Yeah. And, but there's also like, not all breakings in management are mutual. And if that's true for corporate culture, I would imagine it's even more true for a growing professionalism type.
Sure, it's a growing scene.
Yeah,
You're still trying to figure stuff out.
We know that the most mature people are not necessarily coaching and GMing in Overwatch right now. I'm not calling any of those people immature, by the way. I'm just saying that there's more mature people who are maybe a C-level whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So, but like ideally, yeah, there's some sort of like translation handshake period, and then you kind of but it also at the same time, like in esports, there hasn't really been that. It's like, hey, we announced that this coach is gone today.
Yeah.
And we're announcing this new coach. And
I mean, at least there's someone else to sort of help you. Like, but in my mind was like, okay, so they're definitely hiring someone in like the last 2 weeks of the contract for Kate, right? So they can have like,
they
over
announced that Kate was leaving at the beginning of stage 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or like around that time. It was a month plus in advance.
Yeah, and they've definitely been looking behind the scenes before they made this public post about, trying to hire a new GM. And again, a lot of this is speculation on my part, but it's based in some form of reason. Why are we looking for a GM, and why don't we have one on not on reserve, but when you rotate somebody out in that kind of position that has that should have that level of power, why is there not somebody immediately filling that spot? Because that's a big power vacuum to not have filled. I think that's shifting hats to other people that either don't have the credentials to do it, or maybe it's vapid. I don't know.
My personal guess is, and again, like this is all guess. All we're doing right now is asking like, why wasn't this handled better?
Yeah.
So the benefit of the doubt route is that they announced Kate was going to be gone. They started doing interviews immediately. They've been interviewing for the past 5-6 weeks, and they just haven't found the right fit that they can afford, bring in, can shovel their culture, whatever, like there's that level of it that like, just because they haven't found one in the time that their GM came up doesn't mean that like they haven't been looking for one or had no idea that we needed to fill this, right?
They have been interviewing.
They definitely
don't get me wrong. They absolutely have. I just think the amount of time it takes them, in my opinion, is not becoming of the level of talent that is out there and that could do the job. That I think you should have narrowed it down to like 3 people right now and then made your decision. That a tweet is now going up is...
Okay, to be fair, somebody points out in chat, good point. Kate's role was technically assistant GM, so maybe we're putting a little bit too much emphasis on the role.
But no, because she was assistant GM for the entire organization, and her roles were specifically for DC. She clarified that in a tweet right after it kind of came out. Okay. People were like, wait, what's this about an assistant GM? And she's like, I forget the guy's name. She goes, this person we're both kind of assistant over the entire organization. He basically takes non-DC.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible that this guy is also like doing a good job. I don't know. It's just one thing. Okay, I got to say it. It's one of the guys that helped Wizard Young already in NYXL with his data stuff, I think, from what I've heard. Like, you would have to assume some loyalty there. Dude, I know you got to make it work with it, Wizard Young, but depending on the contracts, it's done, dude. That system has failed. It's run its course. Get as far away from that as you can at this point. Work into another direction, away from necessary statistical analysis. Like, even people that are statistical analysts will tell you how little value there is when actually applying it to Overwatch right now as well. Like, the amount of applications is so limited. And that project has failed. I understand there are contracts in place. You got to write it out. But come on, you cannot let this fester and install people that seemingly, and that is unfair. Maybe this guy is the real deal in terms of analyzing real gameplay and understanding what players are valuable, whatever.
But why? That's the question. Why hasn't that shown itself? They've had 2 stages so far, and they've gotten how many wins?
Yeah.
More than Shanghai did last season.
Then again, we're all pooping on DC here. They're still a better team than Mayhem. Easily. A team with a trajectory.
Yeah.
And that is still more promising to me than what they did in the past.
You think even Mayhem with the new changes?
We'll see what stage 3 looks like. I don't think they're done yet. I like the Fate signing. Again, we'll have to see. I think that
you're going to be very surprised, mate.
Then let it happen.
Yeah.
Let it happen. Let it fall as it may. If it's bad, it's bad. If it's good, I'll be willing to praise it. I'm an equal opportunity, hater. If you're bad, I'm going to tell you you're bad. But if you're good, great. You did good. You improved the roster. Congratulations. Washington, you started bad. End of stage 2, you looked improved. That Boston win was good. Hats off to you. You're making improvements. 100%. You're a better team than the Florida Mayhem. You're still a bad team compared to the rest of the league, though.
Yeah.
All right. I like that. That's fair. That was kind of I know we didn't kind of really plan on doing that as kind of our bulk of this show, but it is a really interesting concept. And I think we continue to see, and I don't think that we give enough credit in saying that it's not easy to just create a brand new organization from nothing.
No, of course not.
And, you have some franchise. I mean, you have LCS, right? Which is probably the closest to franchising in esports outside of Overwatch League. So you've got a lot of trial and error here. And I think you definitely saw, you saw some people who kind of went with the GM route, who's just kind of more of an organizational guru and can like delegate that stuff really well. You also went a GM route of like, this is the smartest person in Overwatch right now. They know the game in and out and play it at a great thing. They're going to lead our organization. A lot of teams took a lot of different routes, and the people at the top made those decisions, and they are paying for them. Some of them are, continuing to bang their head against the wall. At a season and a half, if your team is still struggling and it's from an organizational thing, you have to switch your organizational philosophy. I think. That's how I
think teams are too quick to start moving players around, and I think there's definitely a time and place for that, 100%. But I think most of it probably I wouldn't say most of it. I'd say a good majority of it probably stems from the management and the people who actually got those players in there in the first place that maybe you do need to get rid of. Who knows? But there's definitely question marks there that I think I'd like to see a better churn in that sense as well. I think there are very deserving Contenders coaches and Contenders GMs and team managers that deserve a spot in this league, whereas others have kind of squandered it. And if they haven't, then there's a problem there that needs to be fixed. Then if it's not them, then there's something about the team, the funding, whatever it may be. There's something wrong, and you have to get in there and find out what it is and fix it. But just rotating players out because they must be the problem. Like, it's very lazy, and that's the vibe I get from some of these bottom teams. It's just like, well, must be the players. Got to get a new team. It's like, is that the reason why you went 0-7? Is that it? You're going to tell me that was legitimately the reason why Shanghai Dragons went 0-40? It was the players, guys. Those rascally kids going 0-40 again.
I mean, there were definitely teams who won games with less than what Shanghai had.
100%.
At least at parts of the season. So, but I do totally agree with you in that respect. And Perenegade brings up a good point too, as well as, winning is not the only part about being successful.
100%. 100%.
Let me tell you, as a fan of the Minnesota Twins, right now it's great, by the way.
Sure.
But hasn't always been.
Mm-hmm.
Bunch of losers year after year after year. How do you find and how do you build a brand around your team regardless of your win record, and just use your win record to bolster that? Sure, you're gonna have like highs and lows, right? You're going to have times where, less people are really enjoying your team because you're not fun and you suck right now. But it's one thing to go, I just can't cheer for the Mayhem anymore, man. I'm sick of the colors. I'm sick of the players. I don't know anybody. Nothing's going on. There's no watch parties in Florida. I can't meet other Mayhem fans. I feel like I'm isolated in this. They don't make good enough content, whatever. And those are all hypotheticals, by the way.
Sure.
I'm not... If anyone's from the Mayhem organizations listening is like, well, KickedTripod hates us. Like that's not what I was saying at all. It could have easily have
Just
been
an example.
NYXL.
Just an
Could have been
example.
Shock. I think Shock does a great job here. I'm here in the Bay Area. Every time the Shock are playing, I get an email about watch parties. I get, they have their super fan program that they do such a good job with. And I know some of the internal struggles that, a lot of teams have with like creating good content outside of the actual gameplay Overwatch League stuff. And so like, I think that they're one of the teams that are trying their hardest and making great content. And so those are what I think make a really successful organization. And even when the Shock were mid-level tier last year, there were a lot of people coming out to support, a lot of people coming out buying jerseys and that stuff.
It's that same philosophy that saved Shanghai. An 0-40 team should not have the reception that team does, but they caught lightning in a bottle. And they're kind of cheered on as this perennial, even though they've I wouldn't say very successful, but they're successful now. They're looked at as the underdog team, and I think that'll be that way for a couple more seasons, just because of how bad season 1 was for them. So sometimes it is just the luck of the draw, and sometimes it has to be manufactured. Again, great example, Florida Mayhem coming out in season 1 doing their wacky little intros coming to the stage.
So
people loved that stuff. Just for that alone. Most of the people don't care about the games. They just want to they want to see DPS. They want to see the crazy stuff. They want to see Defiant jumping off the top of Hollywood doing the graph shoots. They want to see people goofing around. People like that stuff. And you could still incorporate that. I don't know. Maybe the league's stopping it. I have no idea. But they're not doing that either. That's the thing. You don't have a good team, and your branding's kind of poop. So, is it the players? I don't know.
A lot of ways to make your team marketable besides winning.
Yes. 100%. And there's so many examples in esports. Great example for anybody who's been around for a long time. Go look up some of the EG HyperX commercials from their StarCraft player. Some of the funniest esports content. Full on bigging up somebody as the villain, trying to valet park my car type stuff, being this diva and making it so enjoyable and building those personalities for the fans to kind of latch onto. And we get some half-baked documentary series where half of it is just gameplay footage. You're not trying. I'm sorry. It's not. You're not trying. It's not working.
I usually appreciate the production value that they try to put into that content.
Sure.
But the content
again, most of it,
I don't really care.
Yes.
I that doesn't make me care more. Where did you grow up, sir? When did you decide that you wanted to be
Who's asking these questions,
gamer?
Man?
I'm like, bro, come let me do a piece for you.
For
guys.
Real.
Come
Literally
on, man.
anybody.
We can make this great. If I'm social media or community or content, I'm sitting in those practice rooms every day, and I'm just writing down interactions I see between players.
No, I want the chat to realize that it's not about just we don't. John, what are you saying? You don't care about where somebody grew up? No. If you're gonna do something about the NYXL do this very well. If you're gonna go into a player's past and their history and how they got into gaming, make that a deep dive into that specific topic. Go back there, talk to Meko, maybe interview his parents. Talk to a family friend. Really get into why they became a pro gamer. Really get into why they enjoy gaming. Not just what was your first game. Great. Did you like this? Beautiful. That's the content. See you later.
Yeah,
you got to try harder.
Honestly, even for me, I'm like, if the content isn't interesting, don't ask. If nobody cares what their first game was, and you can go and look, and I can tell you, in most cases, in interview series, people don't care about what your first game was. Of course, there's going to be exceptions. Be like, I really liked it because Swoosh liked Mario and I like Mario, and now I want to be friends with Swoosh and I bought his jersey. That's right. That's the pipe dream. If technically content is to sell your franchise, the best thing is how do you get them to buy a jersey from you or whatever. That's kind of the goal.
That's one of those questions you ask off camera as like an icebreaker to get the interviewee kind of warmed up. And if it's interesting, maybe you put it in anyway.
You said that you actually didn't play a video game until you were 21, but you played a ton of pinball.
Like,
I'm like,
it's
wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. And then, like, I don't know what you're gonna branch off into that. I know that Yiska kind of like talks about this with like the how are you feeling and how that kind of like is framed semantically, but like who else is gonna latch onto that answer? Like, oh well, you grew up playing Legend of Zelda. How does that translate into the Overwatch League? Like that doesn't lead anywhere for me. So like you can use like there's something there, but it's what else accompanies it. You can't just throw out random questions at an interviewee and expect to have a decent interview. There's got to be almost a theme to the piece.
Yes.
Sometimes.
You also homogenize your content because when you ask all 8 of your players that over
the
8
same
pieces of content, like,
and it's the same stuff, and it's not even just the team homogenizer. It's literally everybody.
Yeah.
What's your favorite food? Wow.
And there's a reason why the best content out of Overwatch League regularly is from the actual talent. Well, honestly, it's from the talent of Overwatch League itself. Like, how many more, like, and again, it's dumb, right? But it's because no one's walking around a sideshow and going, what was your favorite color when you had your first kiss? It was blue. Blue is one of my favorite colors too.
Wow.
Great. Instead it's Bren walking around in a vinyl
some sort of Speedo
and
a wet pool noodle.
Yeah. Like, whatever.
And we've got Sideshow up in a tree doing whatever he's doing.
Entertainers and Overwatch League players are being paid to play. And yes, if they've got
why
that
not
market
utilize
to
that?
I'm not expecting Profit to put on a thong or bodysuit and flop around with a pool noodle. But I'm also expecting a little bit more than, hey, Profit, if you could be one anime character, actually, that would be a really good question. No.
London has good. To talk about them, I think they utilize their brand in general as Cloud9, as London Spitfire. I think they had like a great little series where their Korean Overwatch team would try to teach Korean slang to their CSGO team, and it was like kind of fun. It was a brand kind of integration. Like, look, Cloud9 has this ownership has like this other team that maybe you want to support, and maybe Cloud9 fans kind of become London Spitfire fans. They didn't know, right? They're merging. It's unique. It's different. Still like kind of interesting. You still get maybe a little bit of both worlds. You still get to see Prophet. He gets to be a goofball. You still get to see Badoshan be whatever he does. It's different. It's unique. It's not just the same old boring stuff that every team does.
Have you guys watched Custa's News Network?
No,
I haven't watched.
I don't
so
hate that.
Say.
I think it's a decent idea.
It could be great. I have to look at
Yeah.
What it actually is yet. So sorry, I can't comment on that right now.
I saw their ping pong video and I thought that was kind of funny. That definitely like was a very relaxed atmosphere. I like that a lot. I think Neptuno has like a series, like a very short, like 30-second series for the Fusion where he just like roasts like your favorite thing. I thought that was kind of like neat. I was like, okay, that's kind of funny. I don't know how true it is. It seems like it's kind of forced, but maybe there's like a semblance of truth. Like it's funny to see that the top teams actually get it and the bottom teams are still like trying to figure things out.
Yep.
The thing is, I think when you create content with a player, you gotta move with the grain of the player. Like the player gives you a certain type of wind and certain type of energy, and you gotta set your sails in that regard, right? So you're not going to do good content with Faker, the League of Legends player, that is very wacky or do like dumb stuff. What you're going to do is introspective pieces, like illuminate what it means or how you get to being a legend, right? And to self-doubt, to have like a little dip in your career. At the same time, if you have someone like Super, yes, you go down the meme route, right? You go with the grain, and so we have like a wide breadth of type of content. You don't force players in situations where they are like brought to what they usually don't consider, right? And also, that's why you have to adapt interview questions to you have to rewrite the book. You cannot take lessons, copy paste them from sports. Sports people are very different depending on the sport. You gotta adapt to esports. What kind of players are there? You gotta make a little bit of a research maybe before you bring someone on. You gotta have a good idea who these people are, and then just like ask in that direction. And it also takes a very skilled person or also interesting person as the interviewers themselves, to have like the breadth of like knowledge into these different types. And sometimes you have to be upbeat, and sometimes you have to be like introspective and ask, okay, so how did you get there, right? And I think that is a very hard skill, and it's also something that content teams need to realize, right? That there are these, like, for instance, NYXL, they seem to have pretty calm players other than Sebiobi. You do the fun stuff with Sebiobi, like, and then you go like, Jonak, what are you doing? And then he just sits there and talks about how he grew up and how he feels he arrived as an adult in Overwatch League and whatever, with the grain. That's my thing. It should feel authentic.
I think like someone who I think does this really well, not in sports or anything, is like Jimmy Fallon, man. Like look at the why. Do you get Jimmy Fallon in Germany, Yiska?
No.
So
he's like a late night.
Yeah, he's a late night talk show. He was on Saturday Night Live. Like uber talented dude. Like uber super talented. They basically put on better shows every night than like a weekly Saturday Night Live. Like they're that good, and they're just kind of your standard talk shows. But because like Jimmy is kind of like so talented and multifaceted, they're able to like bring on so many different segments. And yep, it's always like this interview, and you kind of always, when you're dealing with the PR company or agency and bringing on an actor, they have to talk about their movie, and you have to do this thing.
Sure.
But, they find
but it's
ways
always
to, like,
a little bit different, and it's
just break
always
it up
pretty
a little
fun.
bit. Doesn't have to be internet shattering to be a good piece of content. So I don't know.
Two things I wanted to talk about. One, I loved what you were talking about with the orgs knowing their players, because again, it's funnily enough, the top orgs know what players they're hiring, and their content reflects that. The bottom teams don't even know what players they're hiring. It's very obvious through their content that bring me that one guy. Who did we sign? That's Sayab player fella. Yeah, he's gonna be great for this interview content. Boy, howdy.
Let me give actual results, so nobody says, okay, Florida was done dirty here. How is it that every time you replace a player 2 weeks earlier, someone from your organization tweeted how awesome the guy that is being replaced was? You don't know in advance, do you? Like, is it just like, are you throwing a dice? Is it like, I don't know. Maybe there's internal conflict between the different parties, and you kind of want to like press that angle and get your way, and then in the end you don't. But come on. Like praising Hakupion, come on, man. This guy has been a trash can for basically all his Overwatch League career. That's it, yeah. And then you replace him with Byram, who is...
Oh boy, can't wait to see him play.
Still
great.
The worst Korean Zen in Overwatch League if he plays, unless Hakupion plays. Like, how is that possible, man?
Well, I mean, there's also too, like, so as a social media manager, like your job is to... Sure, like if you feel like, so like if I was going to be a social media manager for a team and then they sign Byram, the first thing I go into our Discord and I grab the normal crew of guys and gals, and we sit down and I go, what do you guys think about this guy? And you guys are going to give me all of your thoughts. You're going to blah, 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 blah. And immediately I'm going, okay. That's kind of what the general perception is. And then I go to, some coaches and other people, and I go like, what are your thoughts on, here's what I'm hearing about this player. Like, do you think that they're on with that? And if they're on about whatever they're saying, then you're just trying to highlight the good things of what those people are saying. If they're wrong, if, I go back and 3 head coaches are like, no, that's dumb. He's great at this, you should definitely like spin it differently. You're going to try and create a different narrative for that. If you think Byram is bad and Byram is actually good, hypothetically,
Sure.
The best thing I can do as someone creating content is paint Byram as a
In a
player.
positive light.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Sure.
I get you to act a fool and we as an organization look better. People engage with that. They share it. They do. And obviously that's all like online marketing bullshit anyway, but yeah, I don't know.
And again, we're using Mayhem as a scapegoat, but it's very obvious through a lot of the bottom tier teams that
sorry if
just
you're
nothing.
a Mayhem fan. It's nothing personal. I think it's just the easiest topical of like when you talk about what team is just not firing on all cylinders in Overwatch League. Unfortunately, it's
at the
Mayhem
moment
right now.
Yeah, like you look at the Valiant, they haven't been good. They've been definitely getting better, 100%, but they're marketing their players well. Houston, very absent from this conversation. Why? Because that's all they do is market their players. That's the only reason why they're so successful at the mediocre level that they are, is because they really push marketing. So again, great example of shifting the goalposts and figuring out where you want to win. Do you want to win in the marketing war, or do you want to actually win the season? Because you can fight two battles here.
Why not both? Says NYXL.
You could.
They're so close.
Why not both?
Because it's expensive, but yeah, you
100%.
you should at least try, right? But if you
but isn't that the idea here though?
But
if we're gonna make these big sports teams, isn't that kind of the idea?
Yeah.
The idea is to make money, and you find based on your organization what combination of content and winning and salaries and whatever makes you the most money for the longest amount of time. Obviously it's super oversimplified so much to where like Yiska's like that can't actually be right, but it is.
I mean,
generally, no, it is right. It's just sad as hell. Like, you should have you should be sustainable. I'm not saying you should lose money on sports, right? But you should be trying to be the best team you can be.
Sure,
I agree, but. Like, I probably shouldn't have to say even but like Houston Outlaws are something.
There's definitely restraints there.
They can't
it's not
sign
the only
anybody,
team.
And obviously that's an organizational issue.
Yes.
And the argument is then like, well, why are you the organization to begin with then?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're in the organization, you don't have control over those things. You go, well, we can't make content about our level of play. Let's make content about things people do enjoy. Do still care about the Outlaws War. So
like there's a reason why all the Omen by HP Twitch pre-rolls you get is Jake suiting up and he's getting ready to play some Overwatch, and there's a quick flash Overwatch and there's marketing there, right? That's the power of kind of shifting that goalpost. Again, like John said, you might not be able to talk about your 0-7 season. You're not going to really want to talk about it, even if you did. But what you can do is churn out content like you did in Call of Duty about the play, like just anything about the players you can think of. It's going to stick and resonate with the fan base because of just the sheer volume of content you're putting out.
I also think teams thought that, or teams kind of look at the spreadsheet and go, we used to pay our entire team $50,000 a year plus some amount of tournament winnings or whatever. And with Overwatch League, that's a lot higher. What can we get by with on content? Whereas when you're spending, let's just say 1/10 of it, it's a lot easier to justify content.
100%. And another great example to kind of add like a third kind of choice here, Boston Uprising. You don't see a ton of Boston Uprising content, do you? Pretty short and skimpy on it.
Not since PowerPoint had that bug, so it hasn't been able to be used for 1.5 years or so.
Yeah.
It's a joke.
No, I understand, but they're shifting that into bettering the team, better scouting. There's a reason why they're kind of leading the pack along with the NYXL and the Shock in terms of scouting new talent, bringing new talent, being iterative. They might not have the best content in the world. They might not be branded as strongly as maybe they would have liked, but by being good in one column, the brand kind of has built itself. They're the,
and their fans love them for that.
Exactly. But when you look at these bottom teams, they're doing nothing well, and the brand shows exactly that they're not doing anything. and they're why are you here then?
I do believe Boston is. I don't get all the notifications and stuff, but I do believe that they try to do a lot of like events and stuff.
Sure, of course. I'm sure they do.
Also big in collegiate, I think.
True. Yeah, I will have to concede that point. I have seen them try to be very local. But for the most part,
people, there's this marketing around Boston is this low budget underdog Rudy type team, right? Where that's who you want to vote for, not because they have the coolest player intros, the fanciest logos, or even like the most recognizable players.
Definitely.
It's because you like the type of Overwatch they play. You like the way that they make good teams look fallible, and you like that kind of thing. Like as a Minnesota Twins fan, they used to call us the Piranhas because we weren't very good. We had such a small, low salary cap in like the early 2000s when we were like closing out in the Metrodome. But we would still like find the way to contend for playoffs because even on this little things for like Piranhas, we were just always nipping at you, stealing bases when other teams just aren't expecting, like pitchers are taking an extra long time to the mound. We're like, gotcha, kind of thing. So it's like that's marketable, and that's something that you can market by not marketing. Not marketing.
It'll just build itself. The fans will build it.
Right.
Yep. Free marketing.
Anyways.
Gotta love free. Free's great.
Yeah.
Just get it together. Get it together, or sell it to somebody who will get it together. I'm sure Team Liquid would love to have a discounted slot in this league.
Yeah. All right. Let's get out of here. No PvP this week.
Yeah, we ran long.
We did go a little long, didn't we?
We can save them for maybe the extra episode. Maybe we can debate and have the guest pick the winner. I don't know.
I would love to do that, especially with Toronto moves being good or bad.
We'll see.
That would be funny. So I know this was, especially in these slower weeks, I know it wasn't the most like, let's talk about last week's matches. Let's talk about this week's matches. And I know a lot of people really enjoy the episode.
Sure, of course.
When we do that, hopefully you guys kind of enjoyed us just kind of going off and having a good time and talking about some other things that matter that we can't really talk about during the regular season. So thank you all for hanging out. Before we get out of here, though, Yiska, I'll let you go first. Any shout outs for the week? Anything going on? Where can people find you? All that good stuff.
Yeah, considering I'm going a little sick, I'm not sure how much content I will be able to produce this week. Definitely will be on Crouch, of course, and I got an Overture lined up. That will definitely happen, and then we'll see. I'm prepping for the Atlantic Showdown. Try to inform myself on some of those teams because let's be honest, I'm not watching all Contenders regions on top of Overwatch League. I watch less Overwatch than last year. Also because there's less good matches. Last year I watched of the matches, so yeah, we'll see.
Fair enough. And then you can find all your content at Yiska Out on Twitter. And do you have your own YouTube link yet, or you just search for Yiska on YouTube?
No, it's also Yiska Out, I think.
YouTube.com/Yiska Out. So there you go. All right, Joe, what about you, man? Shout outs for the week. Where can people find you?
You can follow me at Volamel on all the socials, except Instagram, because you're not going to see any of my ugly mug on that website. You're not ready for
those sexy eyebrows. Yeah.
You gotta sign up through the Patreon for that private Insta. Know what I'm saying? Anywho, I'm working on a piece about the final piece of Exodia, kind of fitting into Chengdu. Their main tank Jachirin has finally got his visa, so he will be being a worse bumper in the league. Be on the lookout for that and what that means for the Chengdu Hunters. And yeah, got a little bit of a news piece coming out there. So
awesome.
Come on through, follow up, and click that sub button because. That's what all them YouTubers say.
Great piece on Twilight, by the way. If you guys haven't checked that out, like I love when art and like writing comes together. Like one of my favorite websites is Aeon Mag, and they always incorporate some cool drawing towards the philosophical concept they're talking about. Here, once again, I really enjoyed it.
If you're going to talk about the art, I take very, very little credit on that one. It was the website. They were in love with the piece. So they're like, we need art. All illustration, all credit on that whole front goes to Hark Sharks on Twitter. Hopefully I remembered their Twitter handle. I tagged them in the tweet. So definitely go check them out. If you need art, go to them, support your local Overwatch artist. It was great. I loved what they came up with. I thought it was fantastic.
That's awesome. As for me, you can find me everywhere at KickedTripod. Far as shout outs go, my first ever podcast online was Well Met Podcast. It was a Hearthstone podcast. I returned for episode 199 last night or on Monday. And just like I haven't played Hearthstone, so it was, we did two things. So we're just like, hey, what are you up to? And just kind of give them an update of what I was going on. But we also did Hearthstone just had a bunch of nerfs. And so the idea was me not playing Hearthstone in about a year and a half, have to look at the nerfs that they made and then like come up with what my justification would be, having no knowledge of the new cards or the meta. It was pretty funny.
John comes in. Is Dr. Boom still good, guys?
Yeah, so it's just like, it's like, this is a card I've never seen before. They nerfed it from 8 to 9. I'm guessing that they did that because of this, and this. And like, it was funny because I got a couple of them like dead on.
Really?
Just
nice.
They're like, yeah, you actually nailed that. That's exactly the issue right now. And a couple were just like, no, that's not it. Nope. And then they would go and tell you like the real reasons, and stuff. And so that was really fun.
That's cute.
I'm going to be on
good.
again for 200 for like a mega episode with it'll be our original 3 that we started it with, plus the 2 new guys who joined not long before I had left. So we did like 20, 30 episodes together. So there's that. I'm going to be gearing up for DreamHack Dallas. I guess that's next week, so that doesn't really matter.
Oh, go to DreamHack.
Yeah, going to DreamHack Dallas with the Helicon Gaming team.
Fun.
Which is going to be a ton of fun. Oh,
DreamHacks are good.
Shout out, by the way, Mineral on the show a couple weeks ago, starting his own podcast. Going to have Hearthstone for episode 1 called Tempo Shift. Looks great so far. So I'm really excited. If you need more of that Overwatch fix,
go check them out.
You can't go wrong with getting some firsthand knowledge in that respect. So make sure to check that out. Mineral_OW, I believe, on Twitter, because I don't know where the actual stuff is going to all be posted yet. But yeah, so definitely make sure to check that out. And then, find me everywhere at KickedTripod. I'm streaming quite a bit. I just set up Katie's streaming corner over here at school. Like, while she's gone, we got a second monitor, and she's using like a full-on microphone, webcam, little ring light, and everything. It's going to be really cool. So she's excited to start streaming.
Get some squad streams up.
We come home and play WoW every day, and we're just like, we should just stream this.
Are you playing Classic?
I am in the Classic beta.
Oh, are you going to play Classic, though?
Am I going to play? I probably will hop in. I don't know if like I'm going to be a Classic guy.
Okay. I'm willing to come back for Classic, and I think I definitely am. So,
oh man,
maybe I'll stream that. I don't know,
dude. It's been so fun, right? We're having so much fun in BFA.
Yeah, I saw that new raid, and there's like an underwater boss. I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I don't have a subscription. This looks like, but well, thanks.
I don't know, man. It's fun. Anyways, that's it. Make sure to follow the show everywhere. Search for Tactical Crouch. Follow us on Twitter at Tactical_Crouch. And
also Tinder.
Swipe right, bitches. Let's go.
Exactly.
Yeah. Other than that, we'll be back for a very short post show after the music, and we'll see you guys hopefully later this week with a special one.